The message arrived at Earth Central Command at 3:47 in the morning. It came through on a channel that had been silent for 120 years. The night duty officer almost missed it among the usual space traffic chatter. "Sir, you need to see this," she said, calling her supervisor over. "It's coming from the deep sector, from the Dauntless." The supervisor's coffee mug slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. Nobody moved to clean it up. "That's impossible," he whispered. The Dauntless was lost in the Proxima War. But there it was on the screen, clear as day. A signal bearing the unique identifier of humanity's most famous lost warship, the one that had vanished during mankind's first battle among the stars. Commander Tom Reed woke to the insistent beeping of his communication device. He reached for it in the dark of his small apartment, knocking over a book and a glass of water in the process. "Reed here," he mumbled. "Commander, report to Admiral Bell's office immediately," said the voice on the other end. No explanation, just an order. 40 minutes later, Reed stood at attention before the Admiral's desk. The old man looked like he hadn't slept. "At ease, Commander," said Admiral Bell. "What do you know about the Dauntless?" Reed blinked. "The warship, sir, lost during the Proxima War. My grandfather served on it." "I know," said the Admiral. "That's partly why you're here." He turned his screen around to show Reed the message that had been repeating for the past 4 hours. "We're coming home. Prepare the way." "This is coming from the Dauntless?" Reed asked, his mouth suddenly dry. "From something using its communication codes," Admiral Bell replied. "And we're detecting an object moving toward Earth from the far edge of settled space. It's on a direct course, traveling at speeds we didn't think possible. After 120 years. Reed shook his head. "That can't be right." "That's what you're going to find out," said the Admiral. "I'm assigning you to lead a mission to intercept and investigate. You'll take the scout vessel Horizon." Reed tried to keep his face neutral, but excitement and fear fought for control of his expression. "When do I leave?" 12 hours. Pick your team. Small crew, best people. This stays quiet for now." Reed walked through the massive hangar where the Horizon was being prepared. The scout vessel wasn't large, sleek and built for speed rather than combat. Unlike the massive warships that now protected Earth, it could be operated by a small crew. He had spent the morning selecting his team. 3 people, the best he could think of on short notice. "Commander Reed, over here." Jane Wilson waved from beside an open access panel. Her hands were covered in grease, and her red hair was tied back in a messy ponytail. At 32, she was the youngest chief engineer in the fleet, with a reputation for fixing the unfixable. "Jane," he nodded. "How's our ship?" "She'll be ready," Jane said, wiping her hands on a rag. "But I'm having trouble with the navigation system. It keeps resetting itself every time I align it to the coordinates you gave me." Reed frowned. "Could be damage from the last mission." "No, it's something else," Jane said. "It's like something's interfering with it. Only happens when I input those specific coordinates." Before Reed could respond, a deep voice called out from behind them. "I hope I'm not late to the party." Dr. Mark Hayes approached, carrying a medical kit and a duffel bag. The ship's doctor was a tall man with dark skin and a closely trimmed beard sprinkled with gray. He'd served with Reed on 2 previous missions. "Right on time, Doctor," Reed said. "Where's Miller?" "Here, sir," said Sam Miller, appearing from inside the ship. The military historian was shorter than the others, with quick eyes that missed nothing. "I was just setting up my equipment. Not every day you get to investigate a legend." Reed gathered his team around a small holographic projector. "Here's what we know," he began. "The Dauntless disappeared 120 years ago during the Battle of Proxima Centauri. It was the flagship of Earth's first interstellar fleet, carrying 457 crew members. My grandfather was one of them." He displayed an image of the massive warship, almost 800 meters long, bristling with what had then been cutting-edge weapons. At 3:47 this morning, Earth Central received a signal using the Dauntless's communication codes. The message repeats, "We're coming home. Prepare the way." Scans show an object approaching Earth from the far reaches of settled space. After all this time, Jane asked, "How is that possible?" "That's what we're going to find out," Reed said. "Our mission is to intercept this object, confirm if it's really the Dauntless, and determine what happened, and if any of the crew survived." Miller whistled. "If they did, they'd be well over 100 years old. Or their children," Hayes suggested. "Or grandchildren." "We launch in 6 hours," Reed continued. "The horizon will take us to the intercept point in 4 days at maximum speed. Admiral Bell wants this kept quiet until we know what we're dealing with." As the team dispersed to finish preparations, Reed stayed behind, staring at the image of the Dauntless. His grandfather's face looked back at him from a small photo in the corner of the display. Lieutenant James Reed had been just 34 when the ship disappeared. "I'm coming, Grandpa," he whispered. "I'm coming to find you." The launch was troubled from the start. First, the main engines failed their initial startup sequence. Then the life support system showed errors that vanish when the technicians checked them. The navigation computer continued to resist the coordinates, requiring Jane to manually override the safeguards. "It's like the ship doesn't want to go there," she muttered as Reed strapped into the command chair. "Just get us off the ground," he replied. When they finally cleared Earth's atmosphere, the Horizon's engines hummed to life properly, propelling them toward the distant point in space where they would meet the incoming object. Reed looked at the worried faces of his small crew and tried to sound confident. 4 days to intercept. Let's use that time to prepare. Miller, I want everything you can find on the Dauntless and its final mission. Hayes, review all medical protocols for possible survivor conditions. Jane, keep an eye on our systems. Whatever's causing these malfunctions, I want to know about it. As the others turned to their tasks, Reed pulled up the message again on his private screen. "We're coming home. Prepare the way." Something about those words sent a chill down his spine, not just because they came from a ship lost for over a century, but because of what they didn't say. Not "help us" or "rescue us." Prepare the way, as if the Earth needed to get ready for them, not the other way around. Reed stared out at the stars as the horizon accelerated to its maximum speed. Somewhere out there, a ghost ship was heading toward Earth, and he was racing to meet it. 4 days passed in tense silence aboard the Horizon. The small scout ship pushed through space toward the coordinates where they would intercept the incoming object. Strange equipment problems continued to plague them. The lights in the sleeping quarters flickered at night. The ship's computer would sometimes freeze for seconds at a time. The air recyclers made odd whistling sounds that Jane couldn't explain. On the morning of the 4th day, Reed called his team to the bridge. "We'll reach the intercept point in 3 hours," he said. "All sensors on maximum range. I want to know what we're dealing with as soon as possible." "Commander," Miller said hesitantly, "I've been studying the last known communications from the Dauntless before it disappeared." The historian's face was pale. Right before contact was lost, they reported activating something called the fold drive. It wasn't in any of the official ship specifications. Reed frowned. "What was it?" "I don't know," Miller admitted. "There are hints in some classified files that the Dauntless was carrying the experimental technology, something that could bend space." "Great," Jane muttered. "So we're meeting the ship that disappeared while testing an unknown space-bending device. What could go wrong?" "Contact," called out Hayes from the sensor station. "Object detected at extreme range." They all turned to look at the main screen. At first, there was nothing to see in the blackness of space. Then the ship's computer enhanced the image, and a collective gasp filled the bridge. It was the Dauntless. The massive warship was unmistakable, its distinctive silhouette exactly matching the historical records. But something was wrong. The hull, once a gleaming silver, was covered in what looked like a layer of black dust or ash that seemed to absorb all light around it. "It's huge," Jane whispered. The Dauntless was over 4 times the size of their scout ship. "Life signs?" Reed asked. Hayes shook his head. "Nothing registering. But there's power. The reactor is running at minimal levels. Radiation? None detected. But our sensors are having trouble penetrating that coating on the hull. It's absorbing our scan signals." Reed made his decision. "Prepare a boarding party. Jane, Hayes, you're with me. Miller, you stay with the ship." Miller looked relieved. 30 minutes later, Reed, Jane, and Hayes floated toward the Dauntless in their spacesuits. The massive ship grew larger in their visors as they approached. Up close, the black dust covering the hull seemed to move slightly, like a slow-motion wave washing over the metal. "That's not normal," Jane said, her voice tight in Reed's helmet speaker. "Nothing about this is normal," Reed replied. "Look for an entry point." They found an airlock near what had once been the ship's bridge. To their surprise, it responded to Reed's override code, a standard Earth Defense Fleet command that shouldn't have worked on a 120-year-old ship. The airlock cycled open, revealing a dark corridor beyond. "Atmosphere present," Hayes reported, checking his instruments. "Pressure normal. Temperature low but survivable. No detectable toxins. Helmets stay on," Reed ordered. "Let's move." They stepped inside the Dauntless, and Reed felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. The corridor ahead was wrong. The walls curved in strange ways that didn't match any ship design he knew. The metal itself seemed to have grown into organic shapes, like a living thing. And everything, walls, floor, ceiling, was covered in the same black, light-absorbing dust. "The ship's changed," Jane whispered. "It's been rebuilt somehow." Reed's helmet light cast eerie shadows as they moved deeper into the ship. The layout was nothing like the schematics Miller had shown them. Corridors ended abruptly or curved in impossible angles. Rooms had merged together or disappeared entirely. "We need to find the bridge," Reed said, "or what's left of it." They followed what seemed like a main corridor. As they walked, Hayes suddenly stopped. "Did you see that?" he asked, his voice shaking. "What?" Reed turned to look where Hayes was pointing. "I thought I saw a person walking across that junction ahead." Reed saw nothing. "Stay alert," he said. "Could be survivors." But as they continued, Reed began to see things too. Shadowy figures moving just at the edge of his vision. When he turned to look directly, there was nothing there, just the black dust, shifting slightly as if disturbed by their passage. Jane gasped suddenly. "Commander, look." She pointed at a wall panel that was still recognizable as a computer terminal. "It's active." The screen glowed with a faint blue light. Reed approached it carefully. The display showed ship status information, but in a format he'd never seen before. "Can you access the logs?" he asked Jane. She hesitated, then reached out to touch the screen. The black dust on the panel seemed to move aside for her fingers. "It's responding to me," she said with wonder. "I can feel it. Thinking." The screen changed, showing a series of log entries. The last was dated 4 days after the Dauntless had disappeared from Earth's sensors. Reed read aloud. "Final log entry, Captain James Foster. The fold drive activated successfully, but has taken us somewhere else. The laws of physics work differently here. The ship is changing. We are changing. God help us. We're all changing." The message ended abruptly. "What does it mean, we're changing?" Hayes asked. Before Reed could answer, a loud creaking sound echoed through the corridor. The walls themselves seemed to shift around them. "The ship is moving," Jane cried. "No," Reed said quietly. "I think the ship is waking up." A sudden flicker of movement caught his eye. This time, when he turned, the figure didn't disappear. A man in an old-style Earth Fleet uniform stood at the end of the corridor. His body seemed partly transparent, and his edges blurred into streams of the black dust. "Hello, Thomas Reed," the figure said. Its voice came not through their helmet speakers, but directly into Reed's mind. "I've been waiting for you." Reed felt his blood run cold. "Who are you?" he asked. The figure smiled sadly. "I was Captain James Foster of the Earth ship Dauntless. Now I am something else. We all are." More figures appeared behind Foster. Dozens of ghostly shapes formed from the black dust. Men and women in the uniforms of a fleet long gone. "What happened to you?" Reed asked. "We went somewhere no human was meant to go," Foster replied. "A place between spaces. We had to adapt to survive. And now we've come home." "Why now?" "After 120 years. Foster's form shifted, the black dust swirling around him. "Because now Earth needs us. The space we found is expanding. It's coming here, and only we know how to survive it." Reed's communication device crackled suddenly. Miller's panicked voice came through broken and distorted. "Commander, the Horizon systems are failing. Something's interfering. Can't maintain. Need to, back now." But Reed couldn't move. He stood frozen as the ghostly figures of the dauntless crew surrounded them, their bodies half human, half dust. "You have a choice to make, Commander," Foster said. "Join us willingly or fight what cannot be stopped. The storm is coming to Earth. And we are the storm. We need to get back to the Horizon," Hayes whispered, his voice shaking. The doctor was backing away from the dust-formed figures of the dauntless crew. Reed held up his hand. "Wait." He turned to the ghostly form of Captain Foster. "You said a storm is coming. What kind of storm?" Foster's form shifted, black dust swirling around him like a slow-motion tornado. "A storm of reality itself. The place we entered. It changes things, changes matter, changes time, changes people." Jane stepped forward, her engineer's curiosity overcoming her fear. "The dust," she said. "What is it?" Foster smiled. A trail of the black particles flowed from his outstretched hand to Jane's gloved fingers. "Look closer," he said. Jane lifted her hand. Activating the microscopic view in her helmet, she gasped. "It's machines. Tiny, tiny machines." "Nanomachines," Hayes said, moving closer despite himself. "Billions of them. They helped us survive," Foster explained. "They rebuild matter. They preserve consciousness. They are us, and we are them now." Reed's communicator crackled again. "Commander." Miller's voice was even more distorted. "The ship's shutting down. Something's inside our systems." Reed looked at Foster. "Are you doing that to our ship?" "Not intentionally," Foster replied. "But the dust seeks out technology. It wants to understand it, improve it. We need to go," Reed said to his team. "Now." They turned to leave, but the corridor behind them had changed. Where once there had been an open path back to the airlock, now there was only a solid wall covered in the shifting black dust. "You can leave when you understand," Foster said. His voice was kind but firm. "You must understand to prepare Earth." "Understand what?" Reed demanded. In answer, Foster's form dissolved completely into a cloud of dust. The cloud surrounded Reed, and suddenly he couldn't move. He felt the tiny machines seeping through his suit, touching his skin. He tried to scream, but his voice failed him. And then the visions came. Reed saw the Dauntless as it had been 120 years ago. He saw the battle at Proxima Centauri, laser fire flashing between human ships and the enemy fleet. He saw the desperate moment when Captain Foster ordered the experimental fold drive activated. He felt the ship lurch, watched as reality itself seemed to tear open, and then darkness. A place without stars. A void that wasn't empty but filled with something humans had no words for. The ship started to change almost immediately. Metal walls softened like wax. Electronic systems failed. And the crew began to die as their bodies couldn't handle the different laws of physics. Reed felt their panic, their fear, their desperation. Then he witnessed the discovery, a scientist finding that the dust that appeared everywhere in this strange region could be programmed, controlled. It responded to human thought. The dying crew made a desperate choice. They used the dust to preserve their consciousness, to rebuild their failing bodies atom by atom. They became something new, part human, part machine, part something else entirely. And they learned. For what seemed like 100 years to them, but was much longer in Earth time, they studied the strange region they were trapped in. They discovered it was expanding, pushing into normal space, and its path would eventually reach Earth. They had to warn their home, had to help humanity prepare, had to show the way to survive. Reed gasped as the visions ended. He was on his knees, his helmet visor open, the black dust swirling around his face. He could breathe normally, but something felt different. He felt connected to the ship somehow. "Tom," Jane called out. She was sitting against a wall, her helmet also open, black dust clinging to her skin. "What's happening to us?" Hayes was examining his own arms where the dust had formed intricate patterns on his skin. "It's changing us," he said with surprising calm. Like it changed them. Not fully. Foster's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, just enough to understand, to communicate. Reed stood up, feeling strange new abilities awakening in his mind. He could sense the ship around him, not just see it, but feel it, like it was an extension of his own body. "Jane," he said, turning to the engineer, "touch the wall." Jane hesitated, then placed her palm against a dust-covered panel. Her eyes widened. "I can feel the engines," she whispered. "The reactor, the navigation systems. It makes sense now." Hayes was examining a small cloud of dust hovering in front of him. "These nanomachines," he said, "they can heal any injury, cure any disease. They can even store a human mind after death." He looked at Reed with wonder. "Do you realize what this means for humanity?" "It means we have a choice to make," Reed said. He turned to where Foster's form had reappeared. "You want us to bring this technology back to Earth, to prepare people for the coming storm?" "Yes," Foster nodded. "The region we explored is expanding. In less than a year, it will reach your solar system. Without preparation, billions will die as reality itself changes around them. But with this," Reed gestured to the dust on his skin, "people could survive. Adapt? Yes. But they will become different, as we are different." Reed thought of Earth, of its billions of people going about their lives, unaware of what was coming. Will they still be human? Foster's form flickered. What is human? We asked ourselves that question for decades as we change. We still don't have an answer. A new voice broke into their conversation. It was Miller, calling from the horizon. "Commander, Earth Defense Fleet has detected our situation. They're sending ships to quarantine or destroy the Dauntless. They think it's carrying some kind of infection." Reed looked at his team. The black dust had marked them all now, changing them in ways they were only beginning to understand. Jane could communicate directly with machines. Hayes could see the molecular structure of anything he looked at. And Reed could feel the thoughts of his team, of Foster, of all the transformed crew of the Dauntless. "How long do we have?" Reed asked. "The fleet will be here in 2 days," Miller replied. "Then we have 2 days to decide the fate of humanity," Reed said. He turned to Foster's dust-formed shape. "Show me everything. I need to know what we're really dealing with before I help you take this to Earth." Foster nodded, and the walls around them dissolved into swirling patterns of black dust. "This is just the beginning, Commander Reed. The transformation has already started for you and your team. Soon, you'll understand what we became out there in the dark, and why we had to come home." The dust rose around them like a storm, and within it, Reed began to see the truth of what awaited Earth. For the next 24 hours, Reed and his team stayed aboard the Dauntless. The black dust continued to change them, but slowly and in ways they could still control. Their bodies remained human, but their minds expanded. Reed could now communicate with Jane and Hayes without speaking. Jane could touch any part of the ship and understand its systems completely. Hayes could see the working of his own cells, watching the nanomachines repair and improve his aging body. "It's amazing," Hayes said as they gathered in what had once been the Dauntless's bridge. The room was now a curved, organic space with walls that flowed like liquid metal. These machines could end all disease on Earth. No more cancer, no more heart failure, no more aging. But at what cost? Reed asked. He looked at his hands, where thin lines of black dust had formed patterns under his skin. "We're becoming something different, not quite human anymore." Jane was standing near a wall, her eyes closed, her fingers trailing through a cloud of the nanomachines. "I can feel the whole ship," she whispered. "All the systems, all the power. And the crew. Their memories are stored in the dust. Hundreds of minds, all connected." Foster's dust form appeared beside them. "Now you understand what we became," he said. "Neither fully human nor fully machine. Something new." Reed faced the ghostly captain. "I need to speak with Miller on the horizon." "Alone?" Foster nodded, and a clear communication channel opened in Reed's mind. It felt like speaking, but no sound came from his mouth. "Miller," Reed called. "Can you hear me?" "Commander." Miller's voice sounded distant and confused. "Where are you? I can't see you on any cameras. I'm still on the Dauntless. Things have changed. What's the status of the approaching fleet?" 12 ships, heavily armed. They'll be here in 18 hours. Admiral Bell is leading them personally. She's ordered me to break off contact with the Dauntless and prepare for quarantine procedures. Have you told her what we've learned? About the expanding region of space? About the nanomachines? "I tried," Miller said. "She thinks it's a trick, that we've been compromised. She says the dust is some kind of alien bioweapon, and the Dauntless crew are no longer human." Reed closed his eyes. Maybe she's right. The connection ended. Reed turned back to his team and Foster. "Earth Defense Fleet is coming to destroy this ship," he said. "They think you're a threat." "We expected this," Foster replied calmly. "Fear is a natural human response to change." "Are you a threat?" Reed asked directly. Foster's form flickered. "Not intentionally. But the region we discovered is coming regardless of what Earth believes. Without preparation, humanity will not survive its arrival. And with preparation, with these nanomachines, some will survive. Those who accept the change." Hayes stepped forward. "If we could control the transformation process, make it less extreme than what happened to the Dauntless crew." "That's possible," Foster interrupted. "We had no control when it happened to us. We were fighting to survive. But with preparation, the process could be managed." Jane had been quiet, still connected to the ship's systems. Now she spoke, her voice strange and distant. "There's another option," she said. "The fold drive. I can see how it works now. The Dauntless could activate it again, take the ship away from Earth. Buy more time." Foster's form grew darker. "And abandon Earth to its fate. No, we came back to save humanity, not run away again." "You came back to change humanity," Reed corrected. "There's a difference." A new voice suddenly filled the bridge. It came through Reed's communicator, but also seemed to echo within the ship itself. "This is Admiral Laura Bell of Earth Defense Fleet." The voice was hard, authoritative. "Unidentified vessel bearing Dauntless markings. You will power down all systems and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with lethal force." Reed looked at Foster. "They're here early." Foster nodded. "She's lying. They're preparing to fire, not board. I can sense their weapons charging." Reed made his decision. "Open a channel to all Earth ships," he said. A moment later, he felt the connection open in his mind. "Admiral Bell, this is Commander Tom Reed. The vessel is indeed the Dauntless, returned after 120 years. Its crew has been transformed by technology beyond our understanding, but they are not hostile. They've come to warn us about a threat to Earth. Commander Reed. Bell's voice was cold. You and your team are considered compromised. Return to the horizon immediately for quarantine and decontamination. Admiral, please listen. In less than a year, an expanding region of altered space will reach our solar system. Without the dauntless technology, humanity won't survive the change. We've heard enough of these claims. Bell snapped. We detect unknown substances on your ship and the Dauntless. All vessels are ordered to maintain distance. This is your final warning. The connection cut off. Reed turned to Foster. They're going to attack, he said. Can the Dauntless defend itself? Yes, Foster replied. But we don't want to harm Earth ships. Jane suddenly gasped, her eyes flying open. They're targeting the horizon first. Miller is still aboard. Reeve felt a surge of panic. We have to stop them. There's a way, Foster said urgently, but it would mean completing your transformation, becoming fully connected to the Dauntless as we are. You could control the ship's systems directly, create a shield around both vessels. Do it, Reed said without hesitation. Tom, wait. Hayes called out. If you fully connect, you might not be able to go back. But Reed had made his choice. He reached out to the swirling black dust that surrounded them. Miller is my responsibility. I won't let him die. The dust responded, flowing around Reed in a dark tornado. He felt it entering his body, changing him at the cellular level. His consciousness expanded outward, connecting with the ship, with Foster, with all the stored minds of the original crew. In that moment, Reeve understood everything. The nature of the strange region of space, the full capabilities of the nanomachines, the plans the dauntless crew had for Earth. And he saw that Foster hadn't told him the whole truth. Reed's consciousness surged through the ship's systems. He felt the weapons of the Earth fleet targeting them, the energy building in their main guns. With a thought, he created a shield of the black dust around both the Dauntless and the horizon. Then he did something Foster hadn't expected. Reed reached out to every ship in the Earth fleet, to every communication system on Earth itself. Using the Dauntless's enhanced transmission capabilities, he began broadcasting everything he now knew. The truth about the Dauntless, the truth about the coming storm, and the truth about what humanity needed to do to survive. Stop him. Foster's voice echoed, no longer calm but urgent and afraid. He's revealing too much, too soon. But it was too late. Reed's message was spreading across Earth's networks. Unstoppable. The knowledge that the dauntless crew had tried to control was now free. And in that moment, Reed realized he had started a war for the future of humanity itself. 6 months passed. On Earth, everything had changed. The day after Reed's broadcast, panic had spread across the planet. His message, containing everything he had learned from the Dauntless, had reached billions of people. Governments tried to control the information, calling it a hoax or alien propaganda. But the evidence was too strong and the fear too real. When the first signs of the approaching dimensional shift appeared at the edge of the solar system, strange energy readings, distortions in spacetime, denial became impossible. Reed stood at the viewing window of the new Earth Defense Headquarters. His appearance had changed dramatically. His skin now had a faint metallic sheen, with lines of black dust moving just beneath the surface. When he focused, he could shift parts of his body into pure nanomachine form. But he had worked hard to maintain his human appearance, his human thoughts. Not everyone had made the same choice. The Mars colony transformation is complete, said Jane, walking up beside him. Like Reed, she had kept much of her human form, though her eyes now glowed with a faint blue light. All 50,000 colonists survived the first wave when it hit last week. And the changes? Reed asked. Minimal. The controlled version of the nanomachines worked exactly as we designed. They transformed the colony's structures and protected the people while allowing them to keep their human form. Reed nodded. It had been his greatest fear that the changes would be like what happened to the original Dauntless crew, who had lost too much of their humanity in their desperate bid for survival. His mind flashed back to the standoff 6 months earlier. After his broadcast, the Earth fleet had held their fire, confused by the sudden flood of information. In that pause, Reed had managed to convince Admiral Bell to at least investigate their claims. When the scientific evidence proved the dimensional shift was real and approaching, everything changed. Suddenly, the transformed crew of the Dauntless weren't enemies, but the only people who knew how to survive what was coming. But there had been a price. Foster and many of the original crew had opposed Reed's decision to share everything with Earth. They had wanted controlled, gradual change, not the chaos that followed the broadcast. In the end, Reed and his allies had prevailed, separating a portion of the Dauntless technology to develop the controlled nanomachines that now protected key human settlements. Foster and his supporters had taken the original ship and departed, heading out beyond the solar system on a mission of their own. "Dr. Hayes is requesting your presence in the lab," Jane said, breaking into Reed's thoughts. "He says the latest batch is ready." Reed turned from the window. The view outside showed Washington, D.C., partly transformed now. Buildings reinforced with the black material stood alongside normal structures. In the distance, a massive shield generator was under construction, designed to protect the city when the shift reached Earth itself. In the laboratory complex below the headquarters, Hayes was waiting. The doctor had changed the most of the three of them. His body was now almost entirely composed of the nanomachines, constantly shifting and reforming. He had embraced the transformation more fully, fascinated by its possibilities. "The new protective units are ready," Hayes said, gesturing to thousands of small black discs laid out on long tables. "These will allow people to survive without full integration with the nanomachines. One disc protects one person." Reed picked up one of the discs. It was light, almost weightless. "How many can we make before the shift reaches Earth?" "At current production rates, enough for about 4 billion people," Hayes said. "Not everyone, but most." Reed set the disc down carefully. "And the rest? They'll need the full transformation, like the original crew." Reed closed his eyes. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than they had hoped for when this began. Most of humanity would survive with minimal changes. Some would change more dramatically, but Earth would continue. "Commander," Miller's voice came through the communication system. Unlike the rest of Reed's team, Miller had chosen to remain fully human, acting as a liaison between Reed's group and the unchanged population. "The President is ready for your briefing." "Tell her I'll be right there," Reed replied. As he walked through the corridors of the headquarters, Reed thought about the journey that had brought him here. From a simple commander sent to investigate a ghost ship to the leader of Earth's transformation efforts. The nanomachines had given him knowledge and abilities beyond anything he had imagined, but he had fought every day to remember his humanity. In the President's office, the world's most powerful leaders were gathered, some in person, others as holograms. They all looked to Reed as he entered. "The shift will reach Earth in approximately 3 months," Reed began without preamble. "We've established safe zones on every continent. The protective technology has been distributed to 127 countries. The Mars colony has already survived the first wave with minimal casualties and changes." "And the Dauntless?" asked the President. "Any sign of Foster and his group?" Reed shook his head. "Nothing since they left the solar system. I believe they're searching for the source of the shift, hoping to find a way to stop it completely." "Can it be stopped?" asked another leader. "I don't know," Reed admitted, "but we'll survive it either way. Humanity will continue." Later that evening, Reed stood alone on the roof of the headquarters building. Above him, the stars looked different now. The shift had changed the very appearance of space, with new colors and patterns visible to his enhanced eyes. His communicator beeped. It was Jane. "You should see this," she said, her voice excited. "The deep space monitors just picked up a signal. It's from the Dauntless." Reed's pulse quickened. What does it say? Just 3 words. We found it. Reed looked up at the changed stars. Whatever Foster had discovered out there might change everything again. But this time, Earth would be ready. This time, humanity faced the unknown together. He thought of his grandfather, one of the original crew of the Dauntless. Somewhere in the nanomachines that had merged with Reed's body were fragments of his grandfather's memories, his experiences, his courage. "We're still human," Reed whispered to the night sky. "Changed, but still human. And we're still here." The black dust shifted beneath his skin, acknowledging his words. And as the stars continued to change above him, Reed prepared for whatever would come next in humanity's strange new journey.